In the city of Udine, there was a newly married couple called Samuel and Marianne who loved each other very deeply. Before their marriage, Marianne's mother was against their relationship. She told Marianne that Samuel was not the one she claimed to be. But Marianne insisted that Samuel was her choice and that she had to marry Samuel. After many disputes, back and forth between mother and daughter, Marianne's mother swore to deny it if she continued the marriage. Marianne ignored her mother, and she decided to marry Samuel because she was deeply in love with him. After her marriage to Samuel, her mother had a broken heart, and she rejected Marianne. A few months after their marriage, something terrible happened that made the couple's finances hard. There was a very big storm in the city of Udine. It destroyed many houses and businesses. Samuel's company was among those affected. The storm destroyed all his property, and he had absolutely nothing left. He became poor and very depressed. There was almost no food or money to take care of him and his wife Marianne. He was devastated. One day, he sat down and thought about his life. He remembered an old friend named Fred who had told him about a very distant city where it was easy to earn money and become rich. Samuel had previously rejected his thoughts, but seeing that he was helpless and desperate, he decided to embark on the journey to the city. He called Marianne one evening and told her, "I have nothing left in this village. There is no one to ask for help, and we have nothing to eat. I want to take a trip to a distant city to work and earn money for the two of us. I promise you that I will come back when I will be rich and that I will bring you back with me. I promise you." Marianne knew her husband was right. However, she was not happy that her husband and she were about to separate in the first years of their marriage. She could not sleep that night. She stayed awake on her bed crying and moaning because she thought about what Samuel had said. The fact that they had no one to go to get help since his family had denied him. So she accepted Samuel's proposal. The next morning, Samuel sold everything he had as a value item to a very rich chief. He divided the money he had in two and gave half to Marianne so that she would take care of her, and took the other half with him on his journey to the unknown city. Before leaving, he promised Marianne that he would always write to her to keep her informed of his progress. Samuel left for the foreign city and arrived there in 5 days. The name of the city was Fiocchi, and compared to Udine, where Samuel came from, Fiocchi was a very developed city with many opportunities. It was not long before Samuel found a job as a worker at a very rich woman named Elena. His job was to wash his cars and clean his mansion. Elena was the only daughter of a very rich businessman who suddenly fell ill and died shortly after. After his father's death, Elena inherited all his father's assets and became one of Fiocchi's richest women. As soon as Samuel could, he wrote to Marianne to inform her that he had acquired a well-paid job. Samuel assured her that everything would be fine and begged her to be patient with him. During this time, a certain merchant from Udine called Eric had his eyes on Marianne. As soon as Samuel left for Fiocchi, Eric began to take his wife Marianne by doing his best to win her heart. But Marianne insisted that she would be faithful to Samuel. Samuel continued to work for Elena, and unlike the other employees, he was exceptional. He did his job with passion and vigor. Elena noticed that Samuel was working very hard and invited her to dinner. Samuel accepted her invitation and went to her house that night. When he arrived, there were all kinds of delicious dishes prepared and arranged on the table to eat like a feast. Elena was wearing a very beautiful dress and was beautifully made up. When Samuel saw her, he was captivated by her beauty. Elena told him, "I noticed how assiduous you are compared to the other workers. I am impressed." Samuel smiled at his compliments. Then he replied, "Thank you very much, Miss Elena. I was taught to always do my best whatever happens. I would have liked to have a man like you in my life. We both know that I am single and that managing my father's empire can sometimes be a burden. Unlike most men from Fiocchi who are lazy and cunning, you are quite different." Samuel was surprised to see how direct she was. He immediately decided to take advantage of her vulnerability and become her husband. He went to Elena and, to his great surprise, he kissed her passionately. "I have always admired you, Miss Elena, but I felt that I was from a lower class, so I do not deserve you. I will not apologize for kissing you because you are so beautiful tonight, I could not help it. Elena was amazed to see how daring Samuel was. Because kissing her was a bold decision that could cost him his job, but he still did it. Elena gave him her kiss and took him to his room. After that night, Elena decided to marry Samuel because he had everything she needed in a man. However, Samuel hid from Elena the fact that he was married. He pretended to be single and unmarried. Immediately after his marriage with Elena, he stopped writing to Marianne. Marianne was devastated. She waited every month to receive a letter from her husband, but nothing happened. This made Marianne so frustrated and sad that she barely smiled. She locked herself in and cried every day. She became depressive. And if my husband is dead, who knows what could have happened to my beloved husband? She wondered. Marianne did not stop crying. But while she was crying for her husband, Samuel was in the arms of another rich woman having fun and living his beautiful life. He forgot everything about his wife, Marianne. After 6 years, Samuel and Elena had 3 beautiful children. Elena trusted Samuel so much that he entrusted her with the full responsibility of his father's business. During this time, back to Samuel's village. Marianne was getting older little by little. Many men approached her over the years, but she refused their advances because of the love she had for Samuel. But after 6 years, she could no longer hold on. She talked to some of her friends and they advised her to go to Fiocchi and look for Samuel. Marianne decided to go there, but she had no money and none of her friends could help her. So she went to see Eric, the rich merchant who had been bothering her for 4 years. She begged him to lend her money for the trip, but Eric insisted that he should sleep with her before helping her. Marianne outright refused to accept these conditions. But as she wanted to leave, Eric convinced her to have a drink with him. Marianne accepted. But she did not know that Eric had put a sleeping pill in his cup. When she finished drinking, she began to feel drowsy and fell in love with Eric without knowing it. The next morning, she was so ashamed of herself. She regretted having had a drink with Eric, but she decided to recover the money she had promised him since the act was already done. The next day, she packed her clothes and went to Fiocchi City in search of Samuel. She spent almost 6 days on the road, and when she arrived in Fiocchi, it did not take her long to locate Samuel. Because she had his picture and that Samuel was already popular because he was married to the daughter of a rich and big businessman. When she located the mansion in which she lived with Elena, she knocked on the door and Samuel answered. He was shocked to see her and took her quickly to one of the friends' rooms in the house. "What are you doing here? What do you mean by that? It's been almost 6 years. I have not been patient enough. But I promised you that I would come back as soon as I had enough money for both of us." Marianne looked at Samuel with surprise because she was told on the road how rich Samuel was after marrying the billionaire's daughter. So how can he say that he had not saved enough money for them? As they were arguing, Elena came back from where she had gone and began to call Samuel. "Honey, where are you?" Immediately Samuel heard Elena's voice. He knelt down and began to beg Marianne not to expose him. He admitted that he had married Elena just for his money and that they have 3 children together. "Please, just pretend to be a maid. Do not leave everything I have built over the years to waste." Marianne looked at Samuel and agreed to do what he asked her. So, Samuel introduced Marianne to Elena and told her that she would be their new maid. "I saw her looking for work in the street, and I immediately recognized her because we come from the same city. Please, let's welcome her and employ her as our maid." Elena, fully trusting Samuel, welcomed Marianne and gave her the job. Marianne looked with pain at Elena kissing Samuel, her husband, and taking him to his room. But she could do nothing but endure. In the following weeks, Marianne walked around as a housewife in her husband's house pretending to be nobody. However, every night, Samuel sneaked into Marianne's room to sleep with her while Elena slept deeply on her bed. This lasted several weeks, until the day Marianne prepared dinner and fell asleep. When she woke up, the whole house was filled with smoke and the food was badly burned. Elena was very angry and slapped Marianne with rage. "You're only here because my darling begged me to let you stay. If you make another stupid mistake, I'll send you back to where you came from." Marianne was boiling inside. She wanted to answer Elena and tell her that Samuel belonged to her. But she remembered Samuel's request and remained silent. She was tired of the humiliation and pain she had endured at Elena's, so Marianne went to her room and began to prepare her clothes. While she was packing, Samuel came home from work and entered his room. He was shocked to see her packing. "What are you doing? What's going on? I've had enough of you and your mistress. You're in charge of her finances. If you really love me, then leave everything behind and follow me to Udine." But Samuel could not leave Elena and her children. It started as a project, but after 3 children, it became reality for Samuel and Elena. For him, he could buy and have everything he wanted. So why would he have abandoned all this and come back to Udine with Marianne to start his life again? "Please, give me 3 more years. We'll only last 3 years and we'll go back to Udine. I promise you that." Before Samuel finished his statement, Marianne rushed to the bathroom and vomited. She washed her mouth and went back to see Samuel, but suffer here because of you, but you sleep shamelessly with all the men of Udine. Marianne was deeply offended in an unfair way and replied to Samuel, "Ungrateful, you left me your wife for 6 good years. You stopped writing to me after the first 6 months. You stopped sending money, you married another woman, and you had beautiful children while I stayed in Udine, disappearing like a flower. Yet you call me ungrateful and mean." Samuel immediately realized his mistakes. He realized that it was him who was at fault, but he felt too proud to apologize to Marianne. And, even worse, he allowed his ego to make decisions. "I order you to leave my house, ungrateful woman, and return to Udine. I am no longer interested in you. I have a better life now. I don't need you anymore." But to Samuel's surprise, Elena did not go to the office that day. While they were arguing, Elena stood behind the door and listened to their conversation. She discovered that Marianne was not the one Samuel had introduced to her. She discovered that Marianne was Samuel's wife and that every night Samuel sneaked into her room to sleep with her under his nose. It pissed Elena off. She felt betrayed and used. Immediately, Samuel opened the door. He saw Elena standing in front of the door and he was shocked. Samuel knew he had been exposed, and he knelt down begging Elena to forgive him. Elena pushed her back and went to hold Marianne in her arms. "I am deeply sorry that you had to go through all this, and I am deeply sorry for the way I treated you. You don't have to leave. Stay if you can. I will treat you better." Marianne didn't believe her ears. She looked at Elena in shock. Elena told Marianne that she didn't have to go back to Udine. "We are both betrayed by this selfish man. It's not your fault. We both loved him to the extreme. But now I know better than we, women, must always watch over each other." Elena sent Samuel out of her house and took back everything she had given him. All Samuel had was just a bag of clothes. He would never have imagined that Elena would one day discover his secret, so he did not plan a day like this. The inhabitants of Fiocchi heard what Samuel had done, and no one accepted to employ him. Samuel finally returned to Udine and started his life anew. He had lost 5 years of his life without fulfillment because he was too greedy, hungry, and cunning. Marianne finally returned to Udim village and apologized to her parents for refusing to listen to them when they had warned her about Samuel. Her parents forgave her and took her back as their daughter. Her mother explained that the reason she was against her relationship with Samuel was because she had surprised Samuel with another woman one particular evening, but she could not tell Marianne because she was deeply in love with Samuel and did not want to believe her. Eric learned of Marianne's pregnancy and begged her to forgive him. He asked her, and they got married. A few years later, Elena remarried a man who sincerely loved her and accepted his children as his own. While Eric and Marianne lived happily ever after, Samuel, on the other hand, struggled during the remaining days of his life in pain and regret.